There comes a quiet turning point in life when something inside you simply refuses to keep pretending. You cannot name it at first. You only feel a strange stillness rising underneath the noise. The things that used to excite you begin to lose their flavor. The conversations that once made sense start to sound hollow. You look around and everything appears the same, yet something invisible has shifted. You have begun to wake up. This awakening is not dramatic. It does not arrive with thunder or revelation. It happens in an ordinary moment, maybe while washing dishes, walking under the night sky, or sitting alone with your thoughts. Suddenly, you feel the gentle hum of existence, a pulse behind all things. And for the first time, you understand that you are not separate from it. You are the awareness through which life is seeing itself. You are not a stranger in the universe. You are the universe in human form, remembering what it forgot. At first, awakening feels confusing. You wonder if something is wrong because you can no longer fit into the same rhythm as everyone else. You begin to hear the silence between their words, the longing behind their laughter, the tension hiding in their smiles. It feels as if you are tuned into a different frequency, one that others cannot quite hear. They listen to the music of ambition while you hear the spaces between the notes. They chase what is next while you are drawn to what simply is. You also notice how the ego disguises itself as spirituality. You see people turn awakening into another competition, another badge of importance. But real awakening humbles you. It strips you of every label, every certainty, every identity you built to feel safe. It shows you that you were never the character you played, never the story you defended so fiercely. You are the silent witness behind it all, the stillness beneath the movement, the watcher of the dream. When this truth dawns, something softens inside you. You stop rushing to be special, to be right, to be more. You begin to enjoy the simple miracle of breathing, the quiet miracle of being aware. You realize that life has been whispering to you all along through moments of stillness and the spaces between thought. You understand that awakening is not about adding something new to yourself. It is about seeing what was always there, hidden beneath the noise of striving. If this message feels like home, stay with us. Like this video and subscribe, not for numbers, but to walk this path together. Because awakening is not a destination, it is a remembering, a returning to what has never left you. And as you sit here now, listening, something in you already knows. You have felt this before, in the stillness after tears, in the beauty of a sunset that asked nothing from you, in the quiet realization that all along you were never alone. Most human relationships are built upon silent agreements. We agree that Monday is terrible and Friday means freedom. We agree that success means climbing higher than others, that safety is found in numbers and bank accounts, that happiness depends on something outside of us. These agreements are invisible but powerful. They shape the way we live, the way we compare, the way we measure our worth against an idea that no one ever questioned. When you begin to awaken, you start to see through these collective illusions. You realize that Monday is not your enemy, Friday is not your savior, and time itself has no opinion about your happiness. You see that the ladder everyone is climbing leads nowhere because it was never built to end. The climb itself is what keeps people distracted. They chase success because they are afraid of stillness. They keep busy because silence threatens to reveal what they do not want to face. You notice how much of life is performance. People dress up their anxiety with confidence. They hide their uncertainty behind smiles and polite words. They keep buying, chasing, proving, all in the hope that someday they will finally arrive. But no one ever told them that the destination does not exist. The map they were following was drawn by fear. Sometimes awakening feels like losing everything. You can no longer find comfort in the old dreams, but the new reality has not yet formed. It feels like standing in between worlds. But this is not the end of belonging. It is the beginning of authenticity. You start to sense that happiness is not at the end of the road, but in the act of walking itself. You find that peace is not something to be achieved, but something to be noticed. Imagine a person who has everything society celebrates. A house that glows in magazines, a job that pays well, a name people respect. Yet, when they are alone at night, they feel a quiet ache, a hollowness that no noise can fill. That emptiness is not failure. It is the call of awakening. It is life whispering, there is more. As you listen to that whisper, you begin to see that awakening is not rebellion against the world, but reconciliation with it. You stop fighting life and start seeing through it. You understand that every illusion was only a temporary mask worn by truth. The dream is not wrong, it is just incomplete until you wake up inside it. You begin to participate in the world again, but now differently. You still work, you still love, you still play, but something in you has changed. You move through life with a kind of quiet knowing, a freedom that no success or failure can touch. You see that the collective illusion is not an enemy to destroy, but a story to wake up from. There comes a moment in awakening when you can no longer pretend to be who you once were. It happens quietly, without any ceremony. One day you find yourself sitting among friends, listening to the same familiar conversations, and suddenly you feel distant, as if you have stepped out of a dream. Their words still reach your ears, but not your heart. You hear people complain about life, about others, about themselves, and you see that what they call problems are often only resistance to what is. You no longer feel the need to join in the chorus of frustration because you can sense that the storm they are fighting exists only in their minds. You begin to recognize how much of society depends on shared illusions. People agree to be upset about the same things, to chase the same goals, to believe in the same stories, because it keeps them feeling connected. But awakening begins to unravel those agreements. You stop nodding to maintain peace, stop laughing at jokes that do not touch you, stop pretending to care about what no longer resonates. The more honest you become, the more uncomfortable others feel, because your silence exposes their noise. One by one, certain relationships start to fade. Not through conflict, but through distance. The calls slow down, the invitations lessen, the conversations dry up. It is as if life itself is pruning your garden, removing what no longer feeds your growth. At first, this feels like loss. You grieve the people who once felt like home. You wonder if you were doing something wrong. But in time, you begin to see that this shedding is not punishment. It is purification. It is the soul making space for what is real. There is often one friend who drifts away first, someone you loved deeply. They do not understand what is happening to you. They think you have changed, and they are right, but not in the way they think. You have not become distant, you have simply become transparent. You are no longer playing the same game, and they do not know how to join you. So they leave, and that leaving hurts. But even in the pain, you sense a quiet truth whispering beneath it. The love between souls does not end. It only changes form. As you stop performing, you begin to feel lighter. There is relief in honesty, even when it isolates you. You no longer trade authenticity for approval. You no longer build your worth on being liked or understood. You realize that belonging built on pretending was never belonging at all. It was survival. Now you are learning to live different. You find beauty in solitude, grace in silence, and comfort in being unknown. This stage of awakening is often lonely, but it is sacred. It is the dark night of the soul, the space between identities. The old you is dissolving, and the new you has not yet taken form. But in that emptiness, the truth begins to shine. The more you stop playing along, the more real your life becomes. You see that you do not need to fix the world or awaken others. You only need to stay awake yourself. And though people may say you have changed, you will know that you have simply become more yourself. You have stopped pretending to be asleep. You have stopped playing roles written by fear. You are learning what it truly means to be free. There comes a point in your awakening when words begin to lose their grip. You realize that silence has a presence far greater than sound. At first, it feels uncomfortable. You want to fill the gaps, to explain, to respond, to keep the rhythm of conversation alive. But then something inside you pauses. You notice that in the space between words, something sacred appears. It is not emptiness, it is awareness itself. Most people are afraid of silence. They cover it with endless chatter, opinions, and noise. They talk about the weather, the news, or other people's lives, anything to avoid the vast quiet that mirrors their own inner world. They confuse sound with connection, but sound is not what connects us. It is presence. When two souls meet in silence, without pretending, without the need to impress or defend, that is when true communion begins. Silence has a way of revealing everything. It shows you who can sit beside you without needing to fill the air, who can simply be. It reveals the depth of your relationships and the truth of your own heart. When you stop trying to escape silence, you discover that it was never empty. It was full of meaning, full of life. You begin to see that silence is not the absence of communication. It is communication in its purest form. As you become comfortable with stillness, you stop performing. When someone asks how you are, you no longer respond automatically with, "I am fine." You speak honestly, even if softly. When someone gossips, you stay quiet because you no longer find pleasure in the emptiness of such words. You start to feel how heavy small talk really is and how light truth feels. You realize that being genuine is far more nourishing than being liked. The more you honor silence, the more it begins to speak. You hear it in the spaces between heartbeats, in the wind moving through trees, in the breath you often forget to notice. Silence is the language of the soul, and once you start listening, it tells you everything you need to know. Share one moment when silence taught you more than words. Your story might be the light someone else was waiting for. When you allow yourself to rest inside silence, something in you heals. The endless search to be understood starts to fade because you no longer need validation to feel whole. You begin to notice that true connection does not come from shared words, but from shared presence. Sometimes you can sit beside someone and say nothing, yet feel completely seen. That is real intimacy. Silence also reveals your relationship with yourself. When you stop running from it, you begin to meet your own being. You learn that you are not your thoughts. You are the stillness in which thoughts appear and disappear. You are not your emotions. You are the space that holds them. And the more you rest in that space, the more peace becomes natural. Most people think connection means constant contact, but awakening teaches you something different. You discover that you can love someone deeply even in their absence. You can feel unity even in solitude, because in silence, separation dissolves. What remains is the quiet understanding that we were never apart to begin with. There comes a time in awakening when something inside you begins to dissolve. It is not your body that dies, but the identity you once believed yourself to be. The person you thought you were, with all your titles, opinions, and fears, begins to fade like a dream after sunrise. This is the quiet death that every seeker must face, the death of the story. At first, it feels terrifying. You are losing everything that used to define you. The ego fights to stay alive, whispering that without it you will vanish, that you will become nothing. But what you discover instead is freedom. You realize that what dies is not you, but your image of yourself. When this death begins, life itself starts to look different. You stop reacting to every wave. You no longer build your worth around praise or collapse under criticism. You see that both are made of the same wind. You understand that an insult does not truly harm you, and a compliment does not truly complete you, because the real you is beyond both. You are the sky, not the weather passing through it. The person you once defended begins to lose its importance. You no longer feel the need to prove anything, to argue endlessly, to be right. You understand that no opinion can contain truth, and no label can hold who you are. You start to live more lightly, as if life were a beautiful play, and you are both actor and audience. You can laugh again, not because you take life less seriously, but because you now see its divine absurdity. It is in this stage that humility begins to flower. You realize that you are not the doer, that life moves through you. Every breath, every thought, every heartbeat is borrowed from something infinite. You see that everything you have ever achieved was grace disguised as effort. The illusion of control fades, and what replaces it is wonder. You stop asking why things happen to you and begin to see that everything happens for awakening itself. There are moments during this transformation when you may feel lost. You might sit in your room surrounded by memories that no longer feel like yours. The people, The ambitions, the roles, all seem distant, like old clothes that no longer fit. You might cry without knowing why, but those tears are sacred. They are the rain that softens the soil for something new to bloom. Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt that moment when everything became light, when you were no longer the one trying so hard to control it all, but simply the one watching life unfold? Your story might remind someone that awakening is not an escape from life. It is learning to see life clearly. When you begin to die to the self, what remains is love. Not the kind of love that clings, but the kind that lets everything be. You love without demand, without fear of loss, because you finally understand that nothing real can be lost. You see that everyone you meet is playing a role in the same cosmic drama, each one learning what they came here to learn. You no longer judge the villain or worship the hero, because you see both are masks worn by the same consciousness. And so you start to relax into life. You laugh more, you forgive faster, you listen deeper. You no longer chase perfection, because you have seen that even the broken pieces shine when light touches them. You begin to understand what all the great teachers meant when they said, die before you die. It is not a tragedy, it is liberation. When the false self falls away, what remains is the pure awareness that was there before the story began. You are not losing yourself, you are returning to yourself. And when you finally see this, you will understand that every death is a doorway, and every ending is an opening into something far greater than you ever imagined. As awakening deepens, your understanding of love begins to change. You start to see that most of what the world calls love is not love at all, but an exchange of comfort, validation, and fear disguised as affection. People say, I love you, but what they often mean is, I need you to make me feel safe, to reflect the image I want to believe about myself. But when you awaken, you begin to sense that real love has no condition. It does not bargain, it does not possess, it does not cling. It is the natural fragrance that rises from awareness itself. At first, this realization can feel lonely. You notice how much of human connection is built on unspoken transactions. I will listen to you if you listen to me. I will stay as long as you make me feel good. I will give if you promise not to leave. It is painful to see, but it is also liberating, because once you see it, you can no longer participate unconsciously. You begin to love differently. You love not to get something, but because you cannot help it. Love becomes your natural state, like breathing. You start to understand that loneliness and aloneness are not the same. Loneliness is the ache of believing you are incomplete, but aloneness is the quiet joy of realizing you are whole. It is not isolation. It is intimacy with existence itself. When you are truly alone, you begin to feel life moving through you, not against you. You begin to sense the divine presence in your own stillness. This is why many people fear solitude. They think it is emptiness, but it is fullness waiting to be felt. They avoid being alone because they are afraid of meeting themselves. Yet meeting yourself is the beginning of freedom. It is in solitude that your heart softens, your mind clears, and your soul remembers what it came here for. You may look around and notice that your relationships have changed. Some people cannot understand the calm in your eyes. They mistake your peace for distance, your stillness for indifference. They may even say you have grown cold, but in truth, your love has grown too vast to be contained by need. You no longer require people to act a certain way to feel love. You simply love them as they are, and in doing so, you become free. Through heartbreak, this truth often becomes clear. When someone leaves, when something ends, you feel the pain of loss, but beneath that pain lies something deeper. You begin to realize that what you miss is not the person, but the reflection of love you once found in them. And when you learn to find that love within yourself, you discover that it was never theirs to give or take away. The heart breaks not to punish you, but to let more light in. As you rest in aloneness, your relationship with everything deepens. You find beauty in small moments, in the sound of the wind, in the simplicity of a quiet morning. You no longer search for meaning in others because you have found it in being. The silence that once frightened you becomes your sanctuary. The solitude that once felt empty becomes the presence of God. And then something remarkable happens. You begin to love the world without needing it to love you back. You start to see that every soul is you in another form. Every act of kindness, Every smile, every tear is love recognizing itself. You stop trying to possess love and become love instead. That is the true power of aloneness. When you no longer need love to complete you, you finally understand what love truly is. It is not something you fall into, it is what you rise as. It is not about two people holding each other tightly, but about life holding itself gently through every form, through every breath, through you. The more you awaken, the more you begin to see that life was never meant to be controlled. The river does not force itself to flow. The tree does not struggle to grow. Yet most people spend their lives trying to control what was never theirs to command. They fight against what is rearranging reality in the hope that it will finally match their expectations. But life cannot be managed that way. The more you try to hold on, the more it slips through your fingers. Surrender is often misunderstood. People think it means giving up, but it does not. Surrender means no longer fighting against the current. It means trusting the intelligence that moves through everything, the same intelligence that makes your heart beat and your lungs breathe. It is not weakness, it is strength in its purest form. When you surrender, you stop trying to make life bend to your will and instead allow life to move through you. There is a strange freedom in this. You begin to realize that you were never in control and that you do not need to be. You start to notice how things unfold when you let them, how problems solve themselves when you stop forcing solutions. You learn to act when action is needed and to rest when it is not. You understand that life does not always require your interference, only your attention. Your relationship with time also begins to change. You stop leaning into the future or clinging to the past. You notice that both are only thoughts arising now. The past is a story replaying in your mind. The future is an image waiting to be believed. The only time you have ever touched, ever lived, is now. This moment is all there is and all there has ever been. When this truth sinks in, the endless chase begins to slow. The anxiety about tomorrow softens. You begin to breathe again. You might recall moments in your life when you tried to control everything, to plan every outcome. Perhaps you built your future on goals and expectations, only to find that life had other plans. At the time, it felt unfair. But looking back, you see that those detours were not mistakes. They were the path. You were never off course. You were being guided, even when you could not see it. There is peace in this realization. You no longer need to fix what was never broken. You stop blaming yourself for what you did not know then, and stop worrying about what might happen next. You start living from a deeper trust, one that does not depend on proof. You understand that every season of your life, even the painful ones, carries its own intelligence. The storm does not last forever, but it cleanses what must be washed away. When you let go, something extraordinary happens. You start to feel life supporting you. You realize that you have always been carried. The need to rush fades. The fear of missing out disappears. You begin to live with a slower rhythm, one that matches the heartbeat of the universe. You still make choices, but you no longer make them out of fear. You make them from clarity. And one day, you look around and see that the peace you were chasing was always here, waiting beneath your resistance. It was never hidden, only overlooked. You were too busy holding on to notice that the open hand is lighter than the closed one. In surrender, you do not lose power. You return to it, because the power that moves the stars and tides is the same power moving through you. And when you finally stop fighting it, you find that life is not something happening to you. It is something happening as you. At the end of awakening, you begin to understand that you were never a separate self trying to reach something greater. You were always the greater thing, pretending to be small, the infinite playing at being limited, the ocean dreaming it was a wave. Every moment of your life, every joy, every heartbreak, every silence has been the universe whispering to itself, reminding you of what you truly are. The loneliness you once feared was not a punishment. It was the space where remembrance was waiting. You start to see that the divine is not far away. It is not in the heavens or in some distant realm. It is here, flowing through every sound, every breath, every heartbeat. The divine is in the way sunlight touches a leaf, in the quiet between your thoughts, in the pause before you speak. Everything is sacred, once you know how to look. Every person you meet is a reflection of the same consciousness, wearing a different mask, speaking a different story, learning a different lesson. You realize that the world was never happening to you. It was happening through you and as you. The people you loved were mirrors showing you your own light. The ones who hurt you were mirrors showing you where you were still asleep. Even your pain was grace in disguise, guiding you back home. There is no one to blame and nothing to fix. Everything has been unfolding exactly as it must for you to remember yourself. When this truth sinks in, a great peace enters. The noise of striving fades. The search ends, not because you have found an answer, but because you no longer need one. You begin to see that life is not a puzzle to solve, but a song to listen to. You are the listener and the song, the dancer and the dance, the dreamer and the dream. In this stillness, you stop asking what your purpose is, because you begin to live it naturally. Your very existence becomes your purpose. Simply breathing, seeing, being aware is enough. You understand that awareness itself is the miracle you were looking for. You are the consciousness through which life experiences its own beauty. You are the eyes of the universe looking back at itself in wonder. If this resonated, stay with us. Comment, "I am ready to listen deeper," and join a circle that practices awareness together. What we explore here is not about escaping the world, but remembering the stillness that lives within it. Because awakening is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of living consciously inside it. As you rest in this understanding, everything becomes lighter. The need to chase fades. The desire to control dissolves. What remains is gratitude. Gratitude for the ordinary, for the breath, for the moment that asks for nothing but your presence. You begin to see that heaven was never somewhere else. It was hidden in the now, waiting for your attention. And when you look up at the night sky, you may feel something quietly awaken within you. A knowing that the stars are not above you, but within you, that every light in the sky mirrors the light in your soul. You are not walking toward enlightenment. You are walking home, back to the place you never left. The journey has never been about becoming something more. It has always been about remembering what you already are. In the next video, we will go even deeper into this mystery, exploring how the awakened mind learns to dance again within the dream, how awareness moves through daily life without losing itself in it. Because the point was never to escape the play, but to play consciously, lovingly, awake,